Greetings, people of the internet. I thought I'd make a quick, no, not a really quick video, but I thought I'd sort of talk about some Resident Evil hot takes. I haven't done a hot take video before. I'm not really the hot take type of guy, but I thought I might as well just come on here and do it. And so, yeah. I think that Resident Evil 7 is the best Resident Evil game, and I do not want to argue that because, in my personal opinion, since Resident Evil 3, I don't think the Resident Evil series has had a true survival horror experience. I do think that Resident Evil 4 kind of got there a little bit with the introduction of like the Iron Maiden, the Regenerator, or really even the Chainsaw Man. I do think, though, that Resident Evil 7 is the first true return to survival horror because, boy, oh boy, the Molded is an excellent enemy type. I do not know why people were criticizing Resident Evil 7. Personally, it's my favorite Resident Evil game now, even though Resident Evil 4 still lives very close and deep into my heart. I do think that Resident Evil 7 is better. Another interesting hot take is I do think that Leon is a very, very overrated protagonist. Even though I am a huge fan of the character of Leon Scott Kennedy, I do think that there are characters much better than him, like Chris Redfield. I don't know why people have been wanting Leon to return, because even though Resident Evil 6, I guess, was the last mainline game that he was really featured in, and I guess if you consider Resident Evil 3 and 4 Remake to be mainline games, then sure. But yeah, I do think that Leon is a very overrated character. Because boy oh boy did Resident Evil 4 freaking glorify his ass so much. I do think that Leon's character is good. But yeah, no, I just don't really understand why people like him over, say, Claire or Chris or even Jill. I just don't really see it. Another fun little thing is that I genuinely do like Operation Raccoon City. I don't understand why the game got so much hate, because if I'm not mistaken, it has a Metacritic score of 52%. I don't think that's deserved. I do think that Operation Raccoon City is a good game. I don't consider the best game of the series, but it is a genuinely enjoyable experience for me, because as much as I love games like Resident Evil 4, 5, and Resident Evil 7, and Village, and even the original Resident Evil games, I do find that Resident Evil Operation Raccoon City is definitely a departure from the series, and that's what I like about it, because it's kind of similar to Mercenaries 3D on the 3DS. That was a big departure from the series, and that's what I like about it. That's what I like about it. And I have pirated the game so many times because it is one of those games where I discovered it, I wanted to play it millions of times, and I've played it millions of times, and it is one of my favorite Resident Evil games, and I do think that the next hot take is definitely going to support that claim. So, yeah. Another interesting one is I do find the Revelations games to actually be really good. I do find that the sort of episodic form of both of those games, kind of going back and forth between like Moira and Claire to Barry and whatever the little kid's name. Point is, though, is that I really like Resident Evil Revelations 2. One of my all-time favorite games, and I've beaten it and I've played it billions of times, and I'm actually playing the game right now on my Xbox, and I do really enjoy the Revelations games. And Revelations 1, I do admit, is a little tad bit worse, because the more that you play it, the more boring it gets, and I did not want to replay that game just because of the fucking boat and the one boss that requires you to get the key on the boat. It's this whole thing, but I do like Resident Evil Revelations 2, and I do think that is one of my personal favorite games. And so, yeah, on to the next one. Okay, so another hot take is that I did actually enjoy Resident Evil 6 for the most part. I do not think it's an absolutely amazing game. I do think that it's enjoyable, specifically from the Leon parts of the game and the Chris parts of the game, but I do think that the game is okay. I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's great. I just think that it's right in the middle. But I do think that it is enjoyable for any Resident Evil fans getting into the series. In fact, when I played Resident Evil 6 for the first time on Xbox 360, I actually made friends with a lot of people who were also playing the game with me. And I was able to get through like full-on episodes with some of my friends on Xbox Live. And so I do think that that's a very good thing. I do not recommend playing the game solo. I do recommend playing it with a friend because boy, oh boy, the game is not fun playing by yourself. So if you do ever play Resident Evil 6, play it with a friend. And last but not least, I genuinely think that Code Veronica deserves a remaster. Or no, not a remaster, a remake. I love Code Veronica X. One of my all-time favorite experiences. In fact, I would love them to even dip their toes into the Survivor games, or even them figuring out a way to, get like the Mercenaries. Like, I want them to sort of explore that. But Code Veronica, I want them to do a Code Veronica remake. I do enjoy Resident Evil 2 Remake. I do enjoy Resident Evil 4 Remake. I also semi-enjoyed Resident Evil 3, and in fact, it was one of the first remakes of that sort of trilogy of games that I actually beat, and I actually like the Resident Evil 3 Remake a little bit better than the Resident Evil 2 remake. Point is, though, is that Code Veronica deserves one, because boy, oh boy, do they need to remake that game so fucking much. Because, despite the game being good, it is also not one I would recommend any new Resident Evil fans to sort of get into, because it is fucking difficult. It is one of the most difficult experiences that you can do, which is why, if you're a diehard fan, then go right ahead. I do think that them doing a remake of the first Resident Evil game, and even Resident Evil 0, I think we'll also get a pretty decent, sort of that classic third-person perspective that, the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes got, and even Resident Evil 4 I also thought was really good. But boy, oh boy, do I want them to remaster or even remake all of those games. Remakes need to be happening. I want them to remake Resident Evil 1 and Code Veronica. Resident Evil 0, not so much, but 1 and Code Veronica, sorry. I want them to remake them. And kind of a bonus hot take is that I do think that them ending Ethan's story arc and ending it with Resident Evil 8 definitely sucked. I do think that since Resident Evil 9 is coming out, maybe they'll bring back Ethan's daughter, but I do think that them ending off his story a game after he was introduced definitely sucks. And I do think that they could have at least added a DLC to where it can truly close off the character's chapter, because boy, oh boy, was I not expecting Ethan to die at the end of Resident Evil 8. And another quick hot take, I do not like any of the DLC for Resident Evil 7, aside from Not a Hero and maybe Daughters, or sort of that story arc. But friggin' 21, friggin' Ethan Must Die and Jack's Birthday, I think all of those DLCs are friggin' stupid. But yeah, no, I would have loved to see Ethan's story to be extended just a tad bit, even if he were to die in a DLC. I did not like the fact that they killed him off right at the end of Resident Evil 8. But I do kind of see that him sacrificing himself is a good move. I just thought that they could have at least had his story last a little bit longer instead of 2 whole games. Anyway, that's all the hot takes I have for today. I do not think any of these are really hot takes. I do find my opinions to be kind of similar to a lot of others. But if you want to share your hot takes in the comments below, please subscribe, comment down below what you truly think is a Resident Evil hot take. Anyway, Dovik signing off, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye.